Thanks so much. Alongside Anthony DiComo of MLB.com. And, you know, Tony, when you look at springs in general, there's always themes that start to develop as the days go on. And I think one of the early themes in this spring is Francisco Lindor really embracing more than ever a leadership role. He's always been a leader, but we see this offseason him bringing out, whether it's Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, working with them. We heard today from Jett Williams that he worked a little bit with him last week as well. It seems to be a real point of emphasis for Lindor this season.
Yeah, and he's doing it in more overt ways, the ways in which you mentioned, helping out some of these younger players, Steve. And I think what we don't realize sometimes is that we see these star players. Francisco Lindor was a star in this league at age 24, 25, and you just expect because of that ability on the field that they're going to be natural-born leaders. That's not always the case, but Francisco Lindor is 30 years old now. He is a veteran in this league. He has experience with this team, having been around since 2021, and I think he has really grown into that role, whereas maybe at first it wasn't always easy, despite the want to be a leader in this clubhouse, but now he has really kind of gone through the lumps. He has seen what works, seen what doesn't, and I think he's taken on a really nice share of the leadership in this clubhouse for sure.
Yeah, and there are a lot of top prospects that are making their way into camp. I mentioned Jett Williams already. Luis Angel Acuna also made his entrance to camp, and his locker, by no mistake, right next to Francisco Lindor. Meanwhile, we did speak with Jett Williams, and I think he is one of the most, if not the most intriguing prospect going into this season. A lot of rankings have him as the organization's #1 prospect, 104 walks last year as a rookie, and he is someone who sets high goals, and his goal, he's not shying away from it, is to make his big league debut in 2024.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of polish, Steve, for someone who's just 20 years old. I think you look at Jett Williams, the first thing that really stands out to me is the speed, especially now with the new rules in today's game. This is a guy who could really cause some havoc on the base paths. The great question is going to be, where does he wind up long term? Is he a shortstop? Probably not, because Francisco Lindor is in town, but certainly he could be a center fielder. Could he potentially play at second base? Carlos Mendoza just told us earlier today that it's not the plan right now in camp. He's not really going to play that much second base in games. Long term, though, it could be a solution depending on what happens with Jeff McNeil, what happens with Luis Angel Acuna, and so on and so forth. It's good to have that versatility, and Jett Williams has a lot of it.
All right, so there's obviously a lot of talk about the prospects, and we do know that the Mets are thinking long term now. It's not just about this season, but there are plenty of scenarios still where this season in 2024 is a good one on the field for this team. And probably the most important piece in terms of making this season a productive one is Edwin Diaz, who we saw back on a mound yesterday, and quite frankly, looking pretty much like Edwin Diaz looked before the injury.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Steve. He looked like Edwin Diaz, and you certainly hope that's going to be the case. He was out here throwing 96-mile-an-hour fastballs. Mets officials had instructed him to go about 80%, but when he ripped off a 96-point-something yesterday, Jeremy Hefner pokes his head out of the dugout and says, whoa, okay.
Back it off a little bit.
And it was in a good way, Steve, because they're not afraid of this guy unleashing it. There's really no qualms about that knee. The Mets are very excited for Edwin Diaz to be Edwin Diaz again in 2024.
All right, that's it from Port St. Lucie here. He's Anthony DiComo. I'm Steve Gelbs.